My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. I'm your host, Era, and today I have Mano Kulasingam. And, actually, I met Mano through a mutual friend of ours, Arun. I think you're the second person that Arun's introduced me to have actually put on the podcast. And Arun is a friend of a good friend of mine's. But Mano is the founder and managing partner for Flair Ventures, a VC firm focused on investing in early stage startups with at least one immigrant founder. And previously, when I met him, he was the co-founder and CEO of DigiFlare, which was acquired 10 years into the business by Ascendo.tv. I hope I said that right. So Mano, welcome. And thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, thanks, Ara. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. We're both parents, and especially since I have kids that are young, this is one of my favorite questions to kind of kick things off, which is you're an entrepreneur, you had a successful business, you exited. Now you're kind of on the other side, helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses or help them kind of get to that next level. What exactly, whether it's in your childhood or maybe your formative teenage years, what moments or what specifically played a part in you developing such a strong interest in tech and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, no, great question. I think, I would say as a child, from a childhood perspective, my dad was an entrepreneur. He had, first business he had was a restaurant in Colombo. That was a family restaurant, and during the riot in '83, that was burned down. And then he went back on to building a travel agency. And so he was an entrepreneur. So, seeing him being an entrepreneur and running his own business was my first foray into entrepreneurship. And certainly he was definitely a big role model in my life. And so that was part of that. And, coming to Canada and certainly having exposure into what the Canadian artists, opportunities lies here. So that was probably the second aspects of it. And tech, to be honest, as a kid, I was never really into tech. But when my older brother, Katha, is really the one that got us into technology. He was the first one that got us the first computer back in early '90s, and we learned about playing games on computers, and that was sort of, he was a conduit to really introducing us to technology, and I followed his footstep. He went on to study computer science at the University of Ottawa, and I followed his footsteps and did the same. So those were two areas where I was exposed to both entrepreneurship and technology, which led me down the path of really pursuing being a technology entrepreneur.
I'm curious because, you ran the business for 10 years, but you've been out of it, I would say 13, 14 years ago is when you first started it. And that was one time when entrepreneurship, and I think especially being a tech startup kind of guy, was not the cool thing that it is now. Because back then, I started just after that. And I remember at that time, there was no resources. Everyone in school, whenever I said I want to do this, they thought it was not crazy, but they just it wasn't the thing to do. Versus now, I feel shows and just popular culture has made entrepreneurship this desirable thing. So what made you kind of, do this thing that was totally against the grain at that point? Because at that point you were in kind of, on the tech side, you could have, worked for a big company, made a nice living, just kind of follow that path. But what made you even decide that, hey, you know what, this is something I want to do? And then kind of go into DigiFlare as well. But I'm curious about that environment, because I don't think people can imagine that kind of environment, but I remember it, and I'm sure you were ahead of me. So you probably had even more challenges than I did at that point. So
yeah, I was fortunate enough. I think I went to school in University of Ottawa, so I was also it was during the dot-com boom. So this is my first year of university was around 1999, and that was the time where internet was just booming, and everything was really it was a period where you could see technologies that explode, right? And so I being in Ottawa, you got, Ottawa was at that time considered Silicon Valley North, and so it was certainly I had the front row seat of seeing all the activities that were happening. So that was a first exposure, and I think part of my brother being in technology as well, he and I certainly worked together to, we launched some Tamil websites that allowed for consumption of different various content, and so that helped sort of open the door into like to really looking at technology can and play a part in really the business side, and so that was the exposure, and leading up to DigiFlare, DigiFlare was an idea that my brother and I came up with. And I actually credit to him for it's coming up with the name DigiFlare. And initially when we started there, it was looked upon as like a web agency, and I used we certainly looked at that as a way to start the business. But certainly as the dot-com boom obviously ended in around 2001, I think sort of the interest started to fade with a lot of people, including my brother was busy with his work. So we sort of it really didn't focus on the business, but I always had wanted to really pursue it. And so I used that as a way to continue to do work in technology by doing websites and so on. But really, what really I wanted to do was, take that idea and really execute it, right? And so DigiFlare was born in 2008 officially, but prior to that, I actually failed twice trying to get that up and running, and so both times it was I partnered with two other founders to really kickstart that initiative, and it didn't work, but through that process, what really helped me was really understanding how to find a co-founder. That's something that there's a lot of content about it nowadays, but back then it's almost trial and error, and so understanding really the dynamics between two individuals who are trying to start this business, and what works and what doesn't is something that through those failures I've learned. And when I did co-found DigiFlare in 2008, it was part of that was also doing some self-awareness, saying, I'm good at this, but I'm not good at this. And then so for me, it was like tech and the operation and building a business is something that I can do, but acquiring customer, which is a big part of the business, is something that was not a strength for me at that time. And so that's what I really sought out to do. And one of my best friends, David, he was someone that I ended up, working together in Toronto, and he's a great relationships salesperson, and so convinced him to say, "Hey, let's do this. We can do this together," and that's how DigiFlare was born in 2008.
Yeah, you hit on a really couple of good concepts. One is this idea, like I've heard this kind of origin story a few times where a few companies started off as agencies servicing customers, they notice a pattern. And it's hard to do this, which is turning something you've done as a service and then kind of productizing it because it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah,
Obviously kind of growing the business from there. And the second thing you said was finding a co-founder is almost like, if you're in a relationship or like you're married or whatever it is, it's like, if you're going to build a business and be committed to it, it's at least a 7 to 10 year commitment, at least.
100%.
And so like that's almost like a long-term relationship. So I know for myself when I was starting, I didn't really think about the details. Luckily, it kind of worked out, but there's a lot of cases where it doesn't work out.
Yeah,
And it's because, like at least for my wife and I, when we were getting married, we did like a pre-marital course, which kind of we had to go through all this stuff, which initially I thought was a waste of time, but actually was really good exercise.
yeah,
I feel like there should be something similar for the co-founder kind of matching, because there's a lot of things you don't realize because you think, you're all excited about the idea, you're all like, you want to build on the momentum, but
yeah,
like, the messy middle, like that book, when you're kind of experiencing it, that's when ugliness could kind of start happening because you're like, oh, I didn't realize that this is what it's going to be like. And, it's like when you're in a relationship, like when you're dating, you don't see them like when they sleep, how they keep their bathroom. So it's the same thing when you're, a co-founder. So
yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to emphasize that point because I think it's such a. I'm glad you shared the fact that you tried it with some other folks and it didn't work out, but you eventually found the right person, like you
Yeah.
could do with dating or getting married, and it ended up really in a good result for you. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As for, founders that are looking for other co-founders, one thing that through my experience, I would say is like really focus on what your strength is and try to, and then also identify your weakness and complement your co-founder with your weakness so that you don't have overlapping strengths. And you may have some of it, that which is okay, but really because when you have two individuals who are sharing the same strength, you end up having opinions. You have strong opinions on things, and that leads to conflicts and friction. And it doesn't. The outcomes are not the greatest, right? So I think that's something that I've learned through that process.
I don't think I can describe it as well as you, DigiFlare, but I'll give it a crack. But then you correct me. But from
Yeah.
what I remember, I believe it was kind of you guys built a product that kind of provided the infrastructure for media companies to kind of stream or like put content into like the mobile in like through mobile, I guess.
Yeah, the simplest way I like to explain it to people of what I do or what DigiFlare was really we helped other media companies like Rogers or Bell or US media companies like Disney and so on. We helped them really compete with Netflix by really building Netflix-like capability.
This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me.
Now, something like that it's a pretty large endeavor, and there's a lot of multiple partners or companies that are helping with various areas. And we focused on the experience, what the end user really sees, and then also around content, how to manage content. And so that was where we really played a big part. And so that's what DigiFlare was. And it's not like we timed it. We just happened to be able to be in the right, timing of where media consumption, especially video consumption, over, mobile and various devices, started to really take off. And certainly Netflix was a big player in that space. And so the other media companies were really trying to catch up. And so we were able to really ride that wave, and that's sort of how the company really took off from there.
So this is another question that, I hear different founders answer differently, but you talked about, being there at the right time, so you can kind of call it luck or good fortune. What percentage are the different factors that go into, a company succeeding, which is hard enough already?
Yeah,
Would you attribute good fortune or luck to?
I would say uh, timing is something that's important because you can when you look back at technology and the history of it, um, if you really can time your solutions toward, um, you can really take advantage of it. And there's a lot of great examples of this. Like Microsoft had smartphone before phones were popular, where iPhone came in at the right time and really had the right hardware capabilities to really enable those experiences. And so for part of like going back to your question, like what is luck? Luck is a combination of really understanding the market and also putting in the work, and then you'll have some also component of luck that plays into it, that allows you to then really capture the upside on it.
Yeah, you gave a good comparison, I think, for you because with BlackBerry was that category maker for smartphones. So they did the part of educating consumers on what a smartphone was because it was a completely new novel concept. Apple just made it better, but they got to benefit from all the resources that BlackBerry put into educating a market. So similar to you,
Yeah.
Netflix was that category maker. They educated people on the importance of what they were doing. And like for you, like everyone else using kind of the technology that you were providing, you didn't have to explain to them the value of it. Like Netflix already showed them, here is the value of this. And so for you is not, I wouldn't say it's an easy sell, but it's easier than having to come explain it from scratch, essentially.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, certainly. When you're talking to other media companies who are looking to now hey, Netflix is eating into our territory. How do we compete? It becomes an easier conversation than otherwise. Yes.
I guess the natural question to ask is, there's various reasons why, somebody would want to sell their business. But, obviously you're growing, you seem to be enjoying the work, you had a good co-founder. What ultimately led you and your co-founder to decide to sell the company? Like, was this something that you were actively looking for? Or did somebody find you?
Yeah, we had a couple of inbounds that came in that they were interested in acquiring us, and so at that point, we were also at a point we were potentially either look to either sell or maybe raise capital. We were looking to grow internationally, and so at that point we got some advice from other founders who've been through the process, and we hired an M&A banker, and started the process of evaluating the potential opportunities there. It wasn't that we were looking to solve right away, but we were looking to explore the opportunity further. And again, with technology, there is going back to there. Sometimes with certain technologies, there is a time window of time where you can capture the maximum output, right? So, a great example right now, like we're in a sort of a down market, right? And you can never predict these things, but certainly like what we looked at was, well, look, video is growing, consumption is growing. Netflix is, certainly growing in terms of the market share. Others are catching up. Eventually you'll get to a plateau, right? Like a plateau or a similar, and then we would have to reinvent ourselves to add more new products and capabilities. And so either you look at to continue and you grow and continue to do that, or you capture at the right time, or you assume that it's the right time, and you sort of take the value from there, right? And so we thought, okay, maybe this is the time to explore this and see what opportunities are out there. And that's how we started that process.
So when you hired the M&A like broker, like banker to kind of start this process or kind of market this deal, did you have more than one suitor?
Yeah, we had like I said, we had a couple of inbounds that potential interest, and then once we brought on a banker, certainly the banker had he was also exploring different potential buyers, and through that it was actually the final buyer was actually a private equity firm that owned our largest competitor, and that was through a connection that the banker had, and that's how the whole deal came about.
From talking to founders or like hearing stories of founders selling their company, if it goes successfully, the money hits your account, you're like, you got some chips off the table is exciting. But the process of selling your company is what I've heard of equivalent to like you're almost like running two, I guess almost two companies in a way. Like one is the company that you have today that got you to this point where you get these opportunities to potentially sell, but then you're also managing this whole due diligence process of putting together all these documents is very tedious. You're getting picked, the buyers are kind of nitpicking all these details. That's a lot of time as well. So how did you guys manage, this process? Because, you're essentially running two things in parallel, but you can't, let the main thing kind of fall to the side because that's what got you here. But you can also, if you want to get the maximum value, you kind of have to put together the best kind of package in terms of all the due diligence. So yeah, how did you guys kind of get that done?
Yeah, it's a long process, but what we did was really, myself and a couple of team members really took the lead, and we were very much focused on that. Whereas, my business partner and others were focusing on the core business. They would support certainly along as part of it. So that way, we've had some, dedicated focus from certain individuals, which helped through the due diligence process. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and time and effort, and but you do have to, and it's very similar to when founders go out to fundraise, when you're doing funding rounds. Generally, if you have multiple founders, one of the founders will step aside and really run the process and own that. And you have to, right? Because you have to really dedicate that time. And it's very similar when, that what we went through was we had to dedicate that time. And we knew there was a period that where we had that due diligence process. And so we dedicated the right time it was needed to get that done. Yeah.
How did you decide to, because, like with the fundraising example, I feel like, I'm not okay, but like it's more uh positive to kind of tell your team because it's like, okay, cool, we're growing. This is actually good news versus you said you had some team members dedicated to the selling process, but I feel like when you tell, someone on your team that, especially if they're not one of the founders, they're like, oh, what does this mean for me? So how did you figure out which folks to include and how did you message it so that it was positive versus, this feeling of dread of like, hey, what's going to be my future like when they sell?
Yeah, it's at that time, I think we try to minimize the number of people that we wanted to expose this to, because obviously, if the deal doesn't happen, then it could create a lot of noise, and then we'd have to then do damage control after. And so what we did was we certainly picked key individuals where there were also management, so that we were able to bring them up to speed and speed on what was happening. And so we limited the number of people that really that needed to be involved. So that way we can control the narrative in that sense. And then as certainly you have to prep them and let them know what's happening and what we're going through. But it's I think the communication is the key part there.
And then so after you guys, luckily it was a successful event, you got acquired, and then you had to, like I think most founders do, there's like a transition period where you have to stay for 2, 3 years, which you did. How was the difference, or like what kind of things did you find that were positive or like, not as good as you wanted because you went from calling the shots and kind of being in control of your own destiny to working for you're essentially becoming an employee of a bigger company that acquired your company. So
Yeah.
like what was that experience like? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Because it's helpful for potential founders out there who will have to navigate that part of the business or that part of the sale as well that they don't maybe think about.
Yeah, it's I think there's definitely a lot of learnings through that process. Culture is something that we had our own culture, and now you're really merging into another company, and so I would say really the key things are you know I think going in, know that you don't have control anymore. So that's accepting that. To really understanding, instead of rushing, I would say spend some time, understand the team, the new team, the integration, how that's working. And so that's going to be important. And ultimately, I think you going from being a leader in an organization where you are the co-founder to now you're part of a larger organization. You have to accept and really own that. Some of the things that I would say are challenging that I found was cultural change. Especially we were North American based. The company that that eventually we got merged into was a Swedish company, and culturally there's a lot of different barriers in terms of decision making and how overall the interactions in terms of management work as well. And so a lot of that learning had to be we had to go through and build that. But my message to founders that are going through the selling process: take what's there like all up front if you can. That's important. To know that once you merge into a company, you don't have control. So accept that and really make the best out of it and really look to grow from there. And three, I would say, be transparent and open, and build a good communication channels with the various leadership that are in the organization.
This is kind of going back a little bit, but because obviously as part of the deal, usually there's, as there's an upfront part of it and there's kind of a earnout as well. But like when the first chunk of money kind of came to your account, I'm picturing if it was me, I would just keep refreshing my account until I see it on my account. So how did it like work on the day of like how did you feel? Were you like refreshing your account? Like was this like big celebration or was it kind of anticlimactic in a way as well? Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you.
Certainly there's a celebration, right? There's a big sort of weight off your shoulder, right? Like both of me and our co-founder, right? Because we were holding the fort. It was a bootstrap company as well, right? So we didn't have the benefits of fundraising because we co-founded this company in 2008 during the recession. But also it's also like it takes a while for it to settle in. And so that's where I think over time, as you as a leader, going from, okay, like we've had all of this, and then now we can step back. I don't have to worry about payroll. No, I'm not making payroll. That's like a founder panic that you always have. And
100%.
so a lot of that, things that we used to worry about were, we could step back, and so that was really positive in that perspective. And yeah, celebration. It's we definitely celebrated. We threw a really great. The transaction happened like end of November, and so we threw a really good Christmas party and celebrated with the team. I mean, a lot of the efforts and everything, it wasn't just myself and my co-founder. It's a lot of team members were part of that journey, and so we wanted to make sure to celebrate and enjoy the moment. Yeah.
So you sold the company, you were there at Ascendio TV for like about, I think it was 2, 3 years. And then now, you recently launched an initiative or like a company called Flair Ventures. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
What is the thesis? You kind of told me about it, but what is the thesis behind this initiative? What makes you guys unique? And why are you personally so excited about launching it?
Yeah, yeah. I'll give a little bit of backstory. So, I left DigiFlare around mid 2019, and my goal was really to get back into the startup world because I've been so focused on the business side that I've really lost touch with the startup ecosystem. So my journey back into the startup system, the ecosystem was really mentoring. So got involved with various accelerators, mentored a lot of companies, and through that journey, I invested in various companies that were going through that process. And so as an angel investor, I got to really learn about investing in startups, and also invested in another venture fund. So it gave me a bit more understanding of what is in investing as as an institutional fund. And so these were really sort of my build up to really launching Flair Venture. And Flair Venture is really the passion behind that is one is in terms of capital allocators in Canada, we need more diversity. So that was a really big motivator for me. And then two, really, I look back at all the investments that I made, and it was all immigrant founders. And so really, that was like a big aha moment for me. And then also, I'm an immigrant, and I came here when I was 10 years old, and going through that journey of building a startup and having the fortune of exiting it. And so using that, really starting Flair Venture, the thesis for Flair Venture is investing in immigrant founders. And that's the main thesis. And we focus in early stage. So pre-seed is where we tend to focus our investments. Yeah, this is still very early stage. Officially launched the fund in September of 2022. Still in the process of continuing to build and looking to grow that in the long term.
You have to look at a lot of deals before you make investments to kind of find the great deals and like the ones that fit your criteria. So
Yeah.
number one, like how many investments have you made so far since you've launched, and like how many deals have you looked at before, in total, I guess, just for someone that is considering this kind of path, or just maybe they want to be an LP as well. Would be kind of good to know this.
before I answer the question, how many deals, a venture is very much a relationship and network business. You're essentially there's two aspects to venture, right? One is your investors, and the other is the founders, right? The companies that you're investing in, and both is a relationship business, right? And so with investors, you're really they're betting on you as a fund manager. And then founders, really, you're convincing them why you're the right firm to invest in their company. And so it really your network, your relationship is a big component of that. I would say we made 7 investments so far out of the fund, and we saw about over 400 companies. So, you know, really it's about 2% hit rate. And even at that, like we're still trying to expand and really grow our deal flow. And that's part of my focus is that we want to increase our deal flow, but also increase the quality of the deal flow. So that's going to require a lot of work, ongoing work that's going to eventually improve that over time as well.
Your acceptance rate is lower than Harvard, so it's quite unique to get a deal done by you guys. That's amazing. Well, I mean, it's a lot of work, like you said. I think most people just think it's like easy to like pick companies to put money in.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I think as an angel investor getting into investing, my really initial thought process was really, I got to meet a lot of different founders, and when I meet really good founders and I really see the value in what they're trying to solve, as an angel investor, I would invest. It's my money, so I can take that risk. Whereas now, as a fund manager, I have fiduciary duty where I'm taking investors' money and deploying that. So I have a responsibility to be able to not only return that money, but also return profits with that, right? And so you really the portfolio construction, your capability to pick the right companies, you have to really look at that at a different lens. And so that's something that through angel investing, which I've got to learn, and now being a fund manager, I'm really helping ensure that we continue to refine that over time, where we're able to get better and better at this.
Just because you want to invest in a startup doesn't mean you'll get that opportunity too. I think you've told me a couple of deals where you wanted to, but like you waited like a day too late, or like something happened and like the window was gone. So it's really an access game for like that part of it. Then it's also getting like obviously you're investing yourself, but you're also getting like other investors as well. So how does your week look? Like how do you allocate your time to both sides of the equation, like the deals, like finding the deals, as well as finding people that want to co-invest with Flair Ventures, or like I guess put money into Flair to do that?
Yeah, it's splitting, time between the two. Like some weeks it's I'm spending more time on the fundraising side, and spending time there, and certainly I'm still actively fundraising, so that's something that I'm doing. Other times it's improving our deal flow, right? Reviewing deals, and ensuring we're going through the pipeline and doing the right due diligence and ensuring that we get to pick those right companies. But also like looking at really fostering our network, our relationship with the various accelerators we have, and ensure that we're continuing to the pipeline is continuing to flow, right? And so that's something, also another area that I continue to do work on. Something else we're looking to really look and do more of is content marketing, creating more content that are going to add value to founders, and so looking at more of a breadth approach as well. So that those are various tactics. So it differs, but generally in 50-50 is where I would say my time is split.
What you're doing, it's not like other kinds of investments like real estate or like other investments where like you can kind of see whether it's going to work or not within like a month or like a year. You're not going to know for 7-10 years like what the track record of your first initial set of investments will be. So you're obviously investing in helping the startup economy or like ecosystem in Canada especially like you said, getting diversity, being able to invest in folks that maybe typically don't get looked at or these companies don't get looked at. So yeah, what's your like 10 or 15-year plan with Flair Ventures? Money can be hard to come by, but here's a $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free?
Yeah, sort of going into venture capital, it's a long-term game. It's not a short-term return mindset. One fund is a 10-year window. So that's the horizon for one fund, right? And so for me, it's when I stepped into this, I'm looking at this as a 20-year horizon, and looking to have multiple funds in the future. But certainly, I need to ensure that the fund one is successful, which allows me to then really look at launching future funds. And so that's the mindset I have. And I have to always keep reminding myself of that as well, because sometimes when you're in the weeds, you forget, and you got to kind of come out and then really look at that as the long-term horizon. Yeah.
Do you have like a goal of like how many companies you want to invest in? Like, or like what's like, do you have like this North Star metric of like what you're aiming for, whether it's like how many companies get acquired or like total portfolio value or yeah.
Well, my goal is to right now is to get to fund three.
Got
And in order for me to get to fund three, I have to be able to show success with fund one and fund two. And if I can get to fund three, which then it shows that I've got a track record, I can actually deliver value. That's my current focus, is to get to that. And then beyond that, certainly building a long-lasting firm. But yeah, that's my current focus right now.
So just for folks like listening, what are the time frames? Like you're saying you're currently on fund one. When would you want to like raise fund two and then fund three?
Yeah, typically takes, because we're in a pre-seed fund, it's about a 2 to 3 year window to deploy your capital. So, let's say I've started in last year, midway through. So it's about a 2.5 years, give or take. And then we would start, raising the second fund, obviously a little bit ahead of that. And so, you know, that's the life cycle. So it's about 2 to 3 years, and then you would still launch your next fund, and then so on. Yeah.
As part one of the perks, I guess, of like what you do is that you get to meet a lot of interesting, very smart people. And obviously, if they're the right fit for what you're kind of looking to invest with, you write a check for them and have a long-term relationship with them. Since you were a founder yourself and a successful one, are you ever tempted to step out of being an investor and like getting back into the game of like, either not maybe not joining one of these companies, but like starting something again because you get that itch because you're seeing all these people with great energy and like doing amazing things. Are you ever like, yeah, I need to get on the horse and like, do this thing again or no?
Yeah, the temptation is always there. I think part of like my what I love doing right now is I get to be really at the forefront of what are the cutting edge, right? Like what are the latest and the greatest, right? And so I enjoy that. So I get to see that, and I get to be really still, I have to be sharp. I have to know what these technologies are, and part of it is like I am very technical. I still code. I would say right now my focus is the fun, because that's sort of the sort of the horizon that I've sort of marching towards. You never say no, right? If the right opportunity comes, it's always I keep an open mind for that.
Looking back, I guess maybe 5 years because that kind of encompasses some of the time you've been building Flair as well as being in kind of the startup world, like kind of the tail end of it. My favorite thing is like looking at like learning lessons or failures because there's a lot of great things that can kind of come out of it. Like you experience it, but maybe something you experience could help somebody listening learn faster. So what's been like a failure or learning lesson you've experienced in say the last 5 years, and what did you learn from that experience?
I'd probably give you sort of my personal one. And I think this is probably a lot of, Tamils and our Tamil parents, how we were brought up. You're not showing, or at least you're not showing emotions, right? And it's a lot of hard love, and I think part of mine is like going through the entrepreneurial journey. You build up a lot of that tough love, and you just got to grind it out. And I think, yeah, I mean, I credit this to my wife, but really being vulnerable and showing emotion is something that I think I haven't done, and I'm trying to do that more. I'm still learning on how to do that. It's a very tough one. But yeah, that's, I would say, is something that the last three years or 5 years I've been trying to really just be able to think about it, understand it from, perspective rather than jumping to conclusion, and be a bit more vulnerable to that as well. Yeah.
It's exactly something I've been trying to work on. It's easier said than done because it's hard to break out of that pattern because especially as you're bootstrapped as well. So even if you want to be vulnerable, there's not that many people you can be vulnerable to because it's like, yeah, vulnerability is great. I think it is great. But like if you imagine telling your team that, hey, I'm really scared about making payroll next week, that's not going to be a great message to pass along.
No,
Or,
no.
I don't know if we'll get this customer, so I don't know if we'll survive past the year. Like it's a really hard pattern to break because you're just used to, especially like you had a co-founder, but like for those people that don't have a co-founder, it's like you really can't share too much because you have to be very careful with perception and you know there should be like startup, therapists, I guess, people you can go to and like just
Well, and that's part of like I think that's really getting outside help
yeah.
is key. Like, so having a mentor or having someone you can speak to, and this is something that I didn't do much of when I was running the company, is like really look for mentors or coaches to help you go through the journey, and maybe having someone to really help you bounce ideas, and also help you with some of the mental stuff that maybe because building a tech company, it's tough. Like there are a lot of ups and downs, and my thing was going through that was really just a lot of that is you kind of bottle up and you just keep going, right? That's the sort of the grind at all costs, right? And so I think that will have long term, it's not healthy, and so any founders that are out there, if you don't have someone you can talk to, like try to get other mentors who you can actually talk to and help through this this journey. It's not an easy journey.
What would you tell 16-year-old Menno?
Yeah, I would say one thing I would tell my 16-year-old is have a long-term mindset. Part of it is like you want the quick wins, and you're always trying to look for the easy way, like how can we, make something, either it's money or it's like winning a deal, or even from a business standpoint, just have a long-term mindset, and then that is what I wish I had. And if I think I would have done a lot of different things a lot differently if I had that early on.
And conversely, like looking forward, in terms of your personal legacy, how would you want to be remembered by your friends and family?
Yeah, yeah, good question. Pretty simple, like a loving father, fortunate enough to spend a lot more time with my son. And so a loving father, a loving husband, I think those two are very important. And good friends, and I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of family here. And so just be able to know that I made time and I spent time with them, and I think that's all matters to me. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's kind of a good segue to the last part of the episode, which is a speed round or game that I like to call Creator Confessions. I'm going to basically say a bunch of statements, and you're going to tell me the first thing that pops to mind. Ready?
Sure, let's do it.
Favorite Tamil food?
Mutton curry.
Something that scares you?
Uh, Public speaking.
Insecurity you have?
Being emotional.
Favorite TV show you're watching?
Right now is Succession.
I think everyone's watching that. I think me and my wife, We're up to like season 3, I think.
Yeah.
Fellow Tamil creator, you want to give a shout out too?
All right.
I'll take it.
Good job. You and the team that Tamil Creators, great job. You guys are doing awesome work.
Thank you. Favorite childhood memory?
Just being in Sri Lanka with the family at the house. I still always vividly remember that. And fortunate enough to visit Sri Lanka for the first time since we left in 2016, and it was amazing to just go back and see the school I went to and the house that I grew up in. So yeah,
What's something you like to do for fun outside of work?
I love cooking. That would be my fun thing. Yeah.
Your favorite movie of all time? It could be English, Tamil, or both.
I think the two, that one Tamil and one English. Tamil, Nayan,
Yes.
and English. I would say Heat. That's still my,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. The other, there's a lot, but I would say Heat is something that I really, yeah,
What's something you could benefit from caring less about?
caring less about. Um, you care less about what others think.
Um,
Yeah,
what's a decision you've been putting off for a while?
that's a good one. Oh, stop me on that one. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Okay,
I,
that's okay. We'll go to the
unfortunately,
next.
I've been able to do everything. I haven't been put off, like putting things off. But yeah,
Who's somebody that you'd love to have on like your invisible personal council?
personal counsel, like as a mentor.
Yeah, like you whether it's business, personal, whatever it is, like you just love to be able to like have them on call to pick their brain.
I would say my co-founder, David. He's someone that, yeah, I'd love to, yeah, always have that as an access. Yeah,
Um, what is the best hour of your week?
mornings. I'm a morning person, so I find that I'm very productive in the mornings.
This is like something I was thinking about, but I feel like as adults we kind of lose that childlike surprise or spontaneity as we get older. So you may not have an answer for this. How do you feel how do you feel like you could introduce more surprise into your life as an adult?
Surprise into don't think too much, just do it, right? I think that's as adults, we put a lot of thought into, like, even just if you want to go somewhere, you're like, let me research, look at all just do it. Yeah.
What's a purchase you've made that you splurged on recently in the last couple of years that you have absolutely no regret about?
Absolutely no regret about it. I have a good collection of knives. Yeah. I have like a Japanese knife that I use and I enjoy using.
That's part
Yeah.
of your cooking that you love
That's
doing.
part of my, yeah, cooking. Yeah.
Pet peeve.
That peeve. Huh. I'm a pretty easygoing guy, but I think, like, when people don't get back to me, yeah, that's like a pet peeve.
Happens a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like it's a thing. You brought it up. It's just like it's like professional ghosting almost, where I appreciate people that say, "Hey, I just can't do it right now," or "I'm not interested." I don't take that personally. It's like I hate the inconclusive data, like no response. Like, are you too busy? No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and surprisingly, like, when you're in the business of either venture or any financial based thing, ghosting is, and I guess, for me, it's always about, like, if I don't want to do it, I'll just say no.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess for people, it's hard to say no. But there are tactics you can use to try to make, but yeah, that's a pet peeve. I'm like, it's okay to say no. It's no is better than nothing.
Yeah. If you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would have.
Regret that I would have. Um, I don't think I would have any regrets. Fortunate enough to have been able to do everything what I wanted to do. Um, yeah, so, that's something that I'm trying to make sure that I do keep doing every time, is don't have regrets, don't hold grudges. And yeah, you could be gone tomorrow. So, so yeah.
It's like I don't know if the CEO of Cash App, I think I don't know if you heard about
The CTO, yeah.
CTO, yeah, like he got
Yeah.
stabbed and he died in like randomly in San Francisco of all places. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to have a mindset of like you can't have regrets. If you want to do something, do it.
yeah.
What's holding you back?
A book you've read or a podcast you've listened to that's had an impact on you.
I would say, one of the things that I found that's hard for me is sticking to habits. And I'm when I pick on something, I'm like if it's one thing I can focus, but if I have to have multiple things and really build up, like example like is like I want to read more books, but how do you read more books? Like, and I will start like I'll be like make these goals, and then 2 3 months in it just fades away, right? And I found the book like Habits,
Atomic Habits?
James, yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good book. That definitely like he breaks it down pretty good. And one of the things that I like from that is like just don't break the chain. So even if like if you're let's say you're trying to do something consistently, even if you don't do it all of it, just do a little bit so that that consistency exists. So that's something that I always say. And like I have it printed right in front of me every time, every day I sit at this desk. Without consistency, you'll never finish. And so that's something that I found that was really, really good book.
Great book. I follow his newsletter too. Love it.
Yeah.
What's a, I guess it's kind of related. What's a belief, behavior, or habit that's improved your life?
When I left the Excedo, my goal was I was just, training 40 and running a business and really just the last 10 years of it, health was not a priority. And so I when I left, I said health is going to be number one priority. And during COVID, I couldn't go to the gym, so I picked up running, and I ran my first marathon last year, the Waterfront Marathon, and it's something that I thoroughly enjoy now. It's I've never been a runner, but I picked up. So anybody listening, if you want to pick up running, I'd highly recommend it.
And finally, a piece of advice that you would give to your fellow aspiring Tamil creators out there.
Don't overthink it. Just put it out there. Just output. Because worrying about that, it needs to be perfect. You need to, you worry that what others are going to think. It doesn't really matter. Just consistently output is what really will get you where you're at. And I see what you're doing, right? Consistently just creating. And yeah, you're not going to see the wins early on, but if you keep putting that work consistently over time, that's just compounds, and you'll start to see the fruits of that labor. And so really just do it.
Love it. Well, Mano, thanks for kind of, jumping on and sharing kind of your experiences, wisdom. For someone listening, is there anything you want to kind of share or like, I guess maybe anything you want to kind of give a shout out for? And also if someone wants to reach out to you because, your story is amazing, they feel, excited or like, inspired and they want to just reach out, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, I would say if there are any technology founders out there that are, you have an idea or you're in the process of incubating that idea and, want to get some support in that sense, you can always reach me. Happy to be a sounding board and take a look at what you're working on. And so you can always reach me either on Twitter, Mano K4 is the handle, or on LinkedIn, Mano Kulasingam. If you look me up, just DM me on either one. I'm fairly active on those two. Otherwise, what I love to see is more Tamil taking the path of being an entrepreneur and founders and really solving some great problems that in Canada. I mean, we have a great opportunity here as a country, and so we need more people building and solving problems.
And for those of you that do plan to reach out to Menno, as you heard him say, he will get back to you. So just reach out.
Yeah, that's one thing I always do. I made sure when I started to say like, startups, they feel that pain. Like they'll reach out to VCs and they'll never respond. I will respond to every email. Maybe I may take a little bit of time if I'm like swamped, but I will make sure you will get a response from me. Either I'm interested, I want to hear more, or hey, maybe this is not the best opportunity for me, but happy to help in other ways. So
Heard
yeah,
it. Well, again, Mano, thank you again. And for those of you listening, as always, appreciate you guys listening, and on to the next episode.
thanks for having me.